Apologies. Okay. And today our panelists are David March from Winston Staffing and Nina Nardone, accounting principals. And I do not know how to say that. Agilon? Is that how you say that? Agilon. Okay, I was pretty close. So this is on the top right there. I would like to suggest switching to speaker view now that we're going to begin our presentation. So this way you can make sure you see the right person speaking. And I am going to hand this over to Dan and Nina. Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here.
Great. Thank you everyone for being here. Welcome to today's Small Business Council program. On a monthly basis, the Small Business Council provides informational sessions addressing best practices and other topics of interest to small businesses, the largest segment of the chamber. Today's program, Employee Management and Hiring During COVID, will provide insights and helpful tips on two key areas for managing and hiring staff during this incredibly challenging time. So now I'd like to introduce our panelists, David Marsh and Nina Nardone. David is an author, career coach, and recruiter who partners with HR professionals and business owners to take the hassle out of hiring top quality candidates. As a recruiter, David has worked with large companies such as Attico and now works for a local company, Winston Staffing in Rutherford. Nina Nardone is Senior Development Manager for Agilon and Accounting Principals, a nationwide staffing firm. She handles business development and recruiting, and her specialty is temporary and permanent placement of accounting, finance, and office personnel. She works with every size business from small to Fortune 100 companies. She takes great satisfaction in creating the perfect match between employers and employees. If you have any questions as we go through the panel discussion, please put them in the chat and we'll address them either between questions or after the question period is over, and we'll get to everyone's questions. So, and I'd like to turn it over to Dan.
Hi, everybody. So I'm Dan Meredith, co-chair with Nina. I'm happy to have Nina and David with us today. We picked today's topic actually because we've attended a lot of other seminars, some from the chamber, some from other organizations, and we're always hearing about what businesses are doing that need to go home, what businesses are doing to work remotely, but I haven't heard much about what the businesses that needed to try to stay normal because they didn't necessarily have to go home or get affected as much as some of the other businesses, and hiring, firing, and managing and trying to maintain normal business during this crisis we haven't heard much about. So who better to have than Nina and David and the professions they're in to ask a few nice light questions to. So I'm going to start this morning. We're going to allow one question from the chat per question to the panelists. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. And I'm just going to both of you, David and Nina, either one of you can answer first. Very general, how have you seen hiring and employee management change since this?
So first off, most companies are working remotely, and I feel like I've heard people that aren't going back until the fall sometime. I am going to be working remotely till December 31st, and I've heard some other larger companies saying that they're not going back until March or April of next year. So the interviewing process has changed. The initial, we're sending resumes over based on the resumes, they choose who they want to meet with, but it's a phone screen initially, and then they're doing virtual interviews. They're onboarding folks virtually. So the landscape of that whole hiring process has completely changed. Not seeing on-site interviewing anymore. Initially, the first couple of months of the pandemic, I felt like everybody was just trying to get their bearings and things were kind of halted. But as we're going on and as we're seeing that we're going to be home for a while, everything's changed. And now things are starting to open up and people are just figuring out how to navigate through everything virtually, and they're doing it. People are working from home. They're still productive.
Yeah. I mean, for me, kind of post and pre-COVID, I find that they're working on more kind of medical positions, and that seems to be a real big thing now. I mean, of course, because of COVID-19 and everything, and working remotely is also pretty huge. I think that it's kind of not going to change until, like we're saying, until like the probably November, October, when more people are going to get to work. But there's still jobs out there, so I don't like to paint this bleak kind of picture. And and there's still people ready to work. The different types of people out there, different motivations. But overall, I mean, I think that the change has really been getting more digital, doing more digital, either going on LinkedIn more, or going on Facebook, or just reaching out on these social media platforms to connect, because that's the key thing, is to continuously connect with other people.
So you guys pretty much touched on our official first question of the program today, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it is a little different. David, I'm going to ask this to you first. Pre-COVID-19 versus today, what is your opinion about the amount of employment opportunities versus the amount of employee prospects? So talking from a business point of view, I'm trying to hire. How many opportunities do I have to find a prospect? And do you think unemployment benefits, government loans, and grants have played a role and continue to play a role in how full the hiring pool is today?
Yeah, so thank you for the question. It's a great question. I think that the answer is that the unemployment benefits are affecting it. I mean, it's going to end soon. The extra 600 that came in is going to end in July 26th. So, I mean, it's the 22nd. Yeah, I would say yes, it has affected it, but it's only going to last for about 4 more days. So it's not going to be a big issue afterwards. Because with the, I just read an article on it, with the situation before we added the extra 600, it was about 400. And now when you add the 600, now it's like, okay, so there might be some people that are kind of taking advantage of the system and maybe, at the shore more, or maybe staying at home more. But I think that's all going to change once that 600 goes away in about 4 days. So that's what I would say about that.
So, Nina, you had mentioned before earlier that you think, at least I think this is what you meant, is that people looking at the future of us having to stay home until November is probably affecting this hiring pool, regardless of whether or not they're getting benefits or not. They're more just afraid to make a move because they're uncertain.
So some people there was a lot of uncertainty, but as people get more comfortable with what's going on, surprisingly, before COVID, the employment market was really candidate favorable. So if you were an employer, there weren't a lot of people out there, and it was a candidate's market. So we'd have turned down, multiple offers with candidates taking counter offers. So COVID comes into play and the whole market is turned upside down, and now there's a lot of people out of work. Surprisingly, like this week alone, I've had a couple of job offers. People had another offer that they took. And would you think that there's multiple offers, but for specific skill sets during this market, there's still a big demand. So it's challenging. But, you know, as I said earlier, as people become more comfortable with working virtually, people are hiring people to work virtually, and it's working out. I think a lot of companies are going to use this as an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm going to reduce my real estate footprint. I don't need to have office space and pay leases or rent, because I can have people work from home and I can save all that money and put that to my bottom line.
Yeah. And maybe even possibly companies taking it home who might be getting rid of perfectly capable employees. It's opening up newer opportunities for other companies that are looking for the skills of those employees who are now available. Probably.
There are pockets of opportunities in this.
Yeah.
So you know what, if you don't figure out how to pivot and capitalize on the areas that are doing well, I don't know that you're going to survive during this. You know, you got to be agile. You got to kind of go with the flow. And, you know, we've adjusted what we do as we send temporaries out. If companies don't have laptops to give to their employees, we will set them up with laptops for the temporary help.
Great.
And help get them set up to work remotely.
Yeah, I mean, with regards to that, I think that the other big issue is, you know, like Nina was saying, the transition of employees. If you know, what I'm seeing is a lot of people are looking to re-educate themselves or make a transition during this time. So you know, it's more important to, you know, really kind of work with their employees to develop them and help them, or you know, hire someone like us at Winston to kind of you know, vet them and understand what their interests are, and make sure that you know, this is the path that they want to go in.
Right. So Nina, there's a question here, a two-part question for you first. That many businesses sent their employees home to work remotely, and a whole other side of businesses, especially some deemed essential, have had to find a way to work together under strict social distancing guidelines. Can you give some tips on how a business owner can deal with a situation where he pretty much has to tell his employees that they do need to report for work, and how this is working out on a management on the management field? What is your opinion on that?
So, you know, a lot of with regard to setting people up remotely, you know, companies need to make sure they get all the hardware in place at the employee's home. So ship everything out. They need to make sure that they have the appropriate software, and using things like Teams or Zoom, have the right software in place so that you can do virtual meetings. Set up the capability to share screens so that you can kind of go through a training process. And then as far as managing your people remotely, set up meeting times. You know, I meet with my group every morning. We meet towards the end of the day. We have group meetings once or twice a week. You can set up one-on-ones with your employees, not only to check to see how they're doing work-wise, but kind of do a mental check and see how they're doing. You know, a lot of people feel very isolated right now. So you kind of want to keep their mental state in check, because you never know who's kind of slipping. So that's a great way to kind of reel them in. You may want to set up some fun things, like we have something set up called WOW. It's Workout Wednesday. And every Wednesday we take a half an hour to go do some form of exercise that you kind of report in, and do a group thing to kind of keep people engaged. So there's a bunch of different things that you can kind of do to kind of reel it in. I would monitor people's activity with KPIs or monitor their tasks as they go along, to kind of keep check on how they're progressing and what they're doing, and making sure that they're being productive. So that's kind of it in a nutshell with managing the workforce remotely. Once people, and there are companies that have gone back now. So, you know, things to put in place to kind of make sure everybody stays safe is you want to have the appropriate distancing. So I have companies that have done split shifts. So 1 week you're on, 1 week you're off to kind of cut down the number of employees in the office. Taking temperatures as employees enter a building. I have some companies that have professional cleaners come in and do kind of a bomb to sanitize their offices, and they do that on a monthly basis. So there's a bunch of different things out there that you can do to kind of ensure that your folks are going to be safe. Wearing the masks.
So even in for either one of you, so on that flip side of the coin, I was talking with somebody that I know who's in the hotel business, and they've had to stay on. I don't know in what capacity and who they're allowed to let in, but to run a building of people that have to somehow come in there and go to work during this whole thing where they didn't go home, that's an area that it sounds pretty challenging. And I was curious if either one of you had experienced anything in your travels of your business on anyone going through that type of scenario where they have a crew, and that crew couldn't go home this entire time. In any way.
I unfortunately, I don't have any clients in that space.
Yeah, I don't have, we don't have clients in hospitality as much. I mean, probably a challenging issue to deal with, if you're having to stay there. But I mean, if that was the case, I would turn it into a team building exercise and, maybe build camaraderie with their team. So because they're letting me live in there for a while.
Yeah, sure.
And that would be my suggestion.
Any questions from the chat here for Nina or David before we move on? Anybody?
No, thanks.
I think we're good so far.
Okay. So I'll move on. So for both panelists, you guys have pretty much answered a lot of what we're talking about. But if either one can answer, now that many businesses are opening back up, they're faced with employees that might not want to return back to work, or at least to the physical location because of the lingering COVID-19 crisis. Can a business owner tell an employee that they must return? Or could they lose their job? These are questions. Or can an owner hire a replacement or a temp until that employee comes back? And what are the rules on that type of situation?
Yeah, so I think that first of all, if you have a good talent at the company, you want to retain talent, and so to a certain extent, I kind of mirror what's going on, what everyone's talking about here on this call, and even before, about the kind of mental health kind of issues as well, and in terms of kind of examining our beliefs of the stay-at-home employee, and there could be some anxiety about having employees work at home. The just general consensus of people may think, oh, they're at home, they're not working. But the truth is that they could actually be working, and it also could be that again the COVID-19 landscape is affecting mental health to think negatively. So I think that's one kind of aspect of it. And then the other one is, of course, if you're going to hire, having an expert like Winston Staffing or a staffing agency that knows what's going on with the candidate pools, can actually ask those questions to kind of vet them and go through different references to make sure that they're ready to work, and then you have a workforce that's able to kind of work through any kind of crisis.
Nice. Nina, anything?
So I think that when I look at the number of companies that I do work with, the bigger players are staying home longer because I think everybody's worried about the liability of if we return too soon and someone gets sick, what's going to be our liability? So everybody, you know, it's kind of like a snow day. Okay, you can't say to your employees, if you're not comfortable staying here and driving, you know, we need you to stay till 5 o'clock, but the weather's getting progressively worse. What's your liability? So I would tiptoe very gingerly around that, because if people tell you, I'm not comfortable coming back yet, I want to stay and work remote, and you force them to come back, you're opening yourself up to a big can of legal worms. So I would certainly consult with counsel before you make statements like that, because that could be illegal.
That's really good to know.
Dan,
And,
Dan, can I jump in here, please?
absolutely, Jim.
So I think Nina's advice is good on that. I think it's right on. But there are some really specific guidelines in the legal community. We have a number of labor law members.
Jim, it may be a good idea to do a meeting.
That's next, actually, Lena. We're gonna get the labor law guys in, some of our members to talk about some of these things, because so the governor created a bunch of executive orders for the protection of employees and their ability to be safe and so forth. And there's some guidelines, protocol guidelines for opening up offices and things like that. There's federal legislation being bantered around Congress right now about a general umbrella for liability to protect businesses, because the fact of the matter is there's just no guarantee. And so I think the right answer, and what I'm hearing, because I ask this question a lot to the company, Dan, and that is, it's not a matter of forcing your employees back to work, right? The forcing is really what puts the hands up by people. Like, why am I being forced back? It's really do you need to have them in the office as much as necessary? And if the answer to that is the person, in order to perform the best job, they have to be in office, well, then you have to do everything you can to make sure that office is good before you tell the person, I'm sorry, you need to come back to work effective Monday. Here's everything we're doing to keep you safe, right? And so therefore, we feel like we've done enough to keep you safe. You got to come back to work. I think the real answer is people are just using common sense. And I'm just gonna tell you what we're gonna do at the chamber. We got a small team, and when we do come back, we're probably gonna come back alternating days. A couple of people in, a couple of people out. We've managed to work pretty good remotely. There's some times when I feel like we're a little disconnected and we need to do some more team things, but we're getting better at that as a team and being productive. But I think the real right answer is understand your operation. Do you need your people to be back right now? Understand that there are some people that are more comfortable than others about coming back. And maybe it's just a one-on-one conversation. And unless your business really needs that person to perform his or her function at their cubicle or at their location, you know, if it's not an office environment and it's manufacturing or some other job, then I think it's really a conversation. And as time goes on, you know, we can bring people back. You know, if you make your employees feel uncomfortable just to get them back, that's not going to be a good work environment. They're not going to be as productive. I mean, and David, do you agree with that? I mean,
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, why I asked the question. Oh, you're asking David. I thought you were talking to me. I'm sorry.
Oh. Well, I mean that kind of lines up with what I was saying. I mean, I believe 100%, Jim, what you're saying about that. I think that it all contributes to the productivity, the environment, mental health, the emotional temperature, if you will, of the people. And, that's all going to, create the motivation to work harder and work better, work smarter. So in some sense, this is like an initiator for people to start thinking that way that weren't thinking about that before. And, you know, it's I guess I'm more of an agent of change. So I you know, understand what you're saying, and I agree with it.
Sure, you're a millennial. All millennials are agents of change.
Hey, so we have some questions in the chat. One of them from Nina. So when advertising for an open position during COVID, is there anything different that should be done to attract the right candidates?
I think that if you are willing to have folks work remotely, that's something that you may want to advertise, because a lot of people are going to gravitate towards that. And people want to know up front, that's one of the first questions they ask when we're presenting a position to them is, will I have the capability to work remotely?
David?
Yeah, I mean, we have a bunch of positions open right now, and I've been able to get a candidate for each one of them using digital media. So, you know, in terms of when advertising for an open position, I think the key thing now is using LinkedIn, using, you know, your Facebook or your Instagram, doing social media posts, and messaging on the platforms where people are. So either doing direct messaging or using the job, you know, placement programs like, you know, ZipRecruiter or Indeed. But more and more what I'm seeing is, you know, when I get good candidates for companies, it's more on these social media platforms to really engage with them, and then, you know, interview them, the whole thing, and then, you know, put them into a for position.
So Dave, is there any kind of link or a program for one of those social media platforms that all of us business owners might be able to tap into?
I'd say one of the big things I could say is Hootsuite. Hootsuite's a big one.
Yep.
Hootsuite is a program which allows you to schedule your posts and put them on each individual social media platform, whether it be you know, Pinterest, or you want to do it on Facebook, LinkedIn, and that way, you know, you're getting the word out there on the multiple different social media platforms, and able to, you know, engage the audience.
Great. Nina, anywhere that you'd recommend we go if we wanted to do social media online prospecting for employees, or tips that you recommend?
So I would gravitate towards LinkedIn. I feel like that's the
LinkedIn?
most business,
Yeah.
professional forum for that.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's just what I would gravitate towards.
Right. Alex, we have a question from you. Moving into the fall, some parents, employees may opt to keep their children at home instead of sending them to school, and would therefore need to work at home. How are businesses and employers handling this generally? So when your children are home from school, but you're being called back to work.
So, you know, as we said before, a lot of folks have adjusted to working from home and they are productive. So there's a lot of hours in the day, you know, so it may be a matter of you're logging on at 5 or 6 a.m. doing work for 3 or 4 hours, and then you get off, you work with the kids, and you're making up your 8 hours, but it could be early morning, it could be in the evening. You know, I think everybody's pretty flexible these days, and they've learned how to be flexible with work schedules to accommodate everything.
And like Jim had said, you know, coming up with ways to deal with slowly bringing people back. There's probably internal protocols from each individual business that will make a deal with you to be able to go home early, to make sure you're there, to make sure your kids get out of
Right
through school day. Any other questions out there in the chat at all about this? Because we can open this up to just general, you know, discussion at this point. We've asked all of our questions. And if there's anything that Nina or David want to add, maybe even ask some of us questions, feel free. We've got some time on our hands here, so.
Hey, Dan, I think if I can jump in and just ask both Nina and David to share any other employee management best practices, things that the small businesses that are on this call right now that are trying to do right by their employees and manage through this, small business practices, best practices, resources, reading, things that business owners can go to for help. If there's an HR chat room or some kind of software out there or some website that, please share any of those things, because I think information, especially about this topic, is king, and we will pursue a few more from a labor law in the coming weeks about that. But anything like that we can discuss, I think could and would be helpful.
So I belong to a group called the Society for Human Resource Managers, and pre-COVID, we were meeting once a month, and they'd have a speaker come and talk on some HR topics. They are a national organization, and I'm sure they have information that you can capitalize on. So it's called SHRM, S-H-R-M. If you Google them, I'm sure you can reach out to them, and they would be very helpful.
Great.
Yeah. SHRM's great. Also, just as a general resource, I think for small business owners, communication is key, and developing a culture around, innovation and productivity, getting creative ideas. That's what I think is going to help people get through this. If you're innovative and you're creative, you can create new ideas and work collaboratively with your team in order to create those innovative ideas through more communication. I think that's going to be the number one thing that's going to get people through this. It's funny because it's like human resources. Your humans, your people working for you, or your resource. So it's about, again, communicating with them more, and, maybe structuring meetings around particular problems so that everyone can collaborate and come up with innovative solutions.
We have a question from Jeff. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Nina.
No, I was just going to say, because you didn't say it, we have a question in the chat. So go ahead.
Oh, great. So the question is from Jeff, and I would think, I'm not sure who you're asking it to, Jeff, but does your firm work only for employees, or do you work directly with candidates as well?
Employers.
So we work with both.
Employers. Sorry.
If there's folks out there that need help with their job search, I'd be happy to help them with that. We help employers find candidates. So, we work for both.
Yeah. So work for both employers and candidates, both.
Can you guys recommend what route somebody would take? This one's coming from my own personal experience now. Looking for licensed candidates at particular jobs. So in my case, we're an insurance agency, and in particular, about midway through this COVID situation, we lost an employee, and I have not been able to meet any new licensed candidates in his place at this point. And if it was before COVID happened, anytime we'd put an ad out, we couldn't keep up with the resumes. And we are really, really having a hard time with that now. Is there anything you guys can recommend I do?
So I would do a Google search of recruiters that specialize in placing. I assume you need a licensed, correct?
Yes.
So I would do a Google search and just Google recruiters that place insurance.
Okay.
Certified insurance professionals.
very simple, and I didn't even do that. You believe that? Tried every other route except for that. Sometimes you got to think a little smaller, right?
There's a lot, like I said, there, like I mentioned earlier, there are pockets that are doing, and it's still difficult to find folks.
Yeah.
So,
I wonder what David was alluding to before, that maybe some people are comfortable with the extra 600 they were getting. So maybe if that runs out, maybe your luck will change, Dan, and you might get a few more phone calls after that.
Yeah.
So
I guess,
the extra $600 a week has definitely played a big role in a lot of folks taking advantage of the system.
Sure.
However, eventually that comes back to bite you, right? Because there's going to be openings on your resume that you need to speak to, and I think it's kind of transparent, and that could come back to bite them. But yes, I think people are going to be increasingly more motivated once we get past this extra $600 benefit. Now there's going to be a little more incentive for people to look for a job.
Yeah.
Yep, I agree.
It seems to me, from the gist of everything I've heard today, that especially Jim made pretty clear as well, is there's really no certainty that any of us can really look forward to except for taking this one day at a time, following the rules, and kind of bending where we need to bend and trying new things.
Yeah. I think you have to kind of create the certainty at this point. It's up to us to kind of develop the mental fortitude or motivation to keep going, keep trying. Especially, I mean, as a recruiter, I have to go through like hundreds of resumes to find the right one. And so, this is, something that, I guess I'm not so different from me in that sense. But I think it's always important to, keep, motivated and have something that can, create that certainty in your life.
Alex, were you going to say something before?
Because I was just thinking about, you're looking for a licensed agent, and I was curious, in your ads that you've put out so far, have they been advertised as virtual jobs? I mean, as working from home? Because I'm just curious if people are responding better to work from home positions as opposed to in-person positions. So I'm just curious about that, how it's looking in the job market.
My experience so far has been that there's not an in-between button for that question. And I don't want to put remote on there, because if we have to go back, or if we're back in my office, but everybody has the right to go home if they want to, and there won't be any recourse or anything over it. But I'm reluctant to hit that one and only option to say remote, because I don't want to not have the right as a business owner in the future to tell someone I need you to come in. To answer that question, I wish that there was an in-between button where I can say
we need a hybrid button,
but it's just not there.
Right. Well, I guess that's something you could always address, obviously, in the description of the job.
Sure.
But no, that's a really good point. Maybe the new, all these Indeed and all those sites need to, upgrade their systems to add in that other option of like hybrid, half home, half in person type of thing. That's a really good point.
That's key.
Yeah. Now, Nina and David, have you been finding that the jobs that are being advertised as remote get more responses as opposed to the in-person positions?
Well, I just tell them that it can start off remotely, but you will have to go into the office, and still go with the same kind of communication as if it wasn't with COVID. Telling them, what's the commute like? You're gonna have to drive here at some point. It is gonna start remotely. but let's still look at how far away it is, 30 miles, 20 miles, what the traffic's going to be like. So, I mean, I think that they should have a hybrid button, and I think that goes back to like just being creative and being innovative, and I think that's what people need to do in this time.
I think it's a good idea to leave it open that they could go back, just so you don't close the door on that. But on another note, I've been here 32 years, and I've been through a lot of different cycles in the market, and we've been through recessions and September 11th, and a lot of crazy things have gone on in the past 32 years. This, for sure, is significantly different than any other downturn I've been through. However, I think everybody needs to keep in mind that it's going to get better. We are going to get through this. COVID is not going to last forever. We're going to navigate our way through, and, take this time to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Get things done that you wouldn't normally get done. Get to spend time with your friends and family that, well, you're not really spending time with a lot of friends because everybody's isolated and everybody's, trying to keep socially distant. But as much as you can capitalize on it, personally, I've been doing a lot of projects in my house that I wouldn't normally get to do. And, I've done things like gardening and painting and cooking. And, you want to walk away from this and say, okay, so what did I accomplish during COVID? Some people say, well, I really don't want to gain a lot of weight. So then form an exercise routine, but try to make the best of it. It is what it is. We're here. This is what's going on. But make lemonade out of lemons if you can, and try not to get caught up in the negativity. Try to make something good out of it. It'll all work out eventually. It's not the end of the world. It's not, if you're not dealing with a grave disease and you have your health, as cliche as this sounds, all of this is fixable, and we're all going to get through it.
I love that.
Yeah. So I'm curious that if Nina and David see businesses going forward changing how employees work, like, are we going to see more flex time and more remote working once we're past all of this? Maybe past, we've already gotten our vaccine, everybody's back to normal and so forth. Do you think businesses will change going forward? Like I said, with flex time and working at home and all that, because I guess we've kind of more or less proven in the last 3-4 months now that I think a lot of our teams are probably doing pretty good at working at home by now. We've all adjusted at this point, and this is, at least our temporary new normal. So I'm just curious if we think businesses will be doing that going forward.
So I think this has kind of catapulted everybody into, you're forced to figure out how to do everything virtually and how to work from home. And a lot of people have proven that they can. So this, I think, is going to change business forever. I think a lot more places are going to start to offer to be able to work remotely. I think a lot of companies are going to reduce their real estate footprint and save money on rent and invest that into their business or put the money into their bottom line. But I think this is going to change everything, and it's expedited the process to get people working from home and being productive and getting more comfortable with systems. And I think everybody's gotten a little push, and they're doing it now.
All got better during this. So many things that I learned that I didn't know before or never had the courage to actually figure out because I thought it was too technical. And it took until I was plunged into this that I learned it's really not that bad. One thing I would say, if we're just talking off the cuff now, that I hope is never, ever something that becomes the culture, though, is that at least from me looking out to the people that work for me, I'm never going to put anyone in a position where I'm going to eliminate the sick day, because now I can tell you, well, okay, you're not feeling good, so I want you to come on virtually. I hope that sick day can still exist. People still need to be able to have their own time. And if I had any kind of stressed out worry at all for the future of what these kind of things can bring, is a culture of working too much because we can do it at any time now. That would be my only fear. Otherwise, I think, like you said, Nina, I think a lot of good things have come from what people have figured out how to do. And we've looked at this positive the whole way. We learned a lot along the way.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, like kind of mirroring what you both are saying, this is like an initiator for a change of workplace habits. What I kind of foresee, similar to what Nina said about reducing their real estate footprint. I think more people are going to go into more of these WeWorks and more of these type of WeWork situations where they could go into, a particular place to get their work done, to work together, see each other, and then go back to working remotely again. That would be, I think, from a financial perspective, advantageous. This whole thing did start off kind of remote revolution. So I think it's gonna, for the most part, gonna stay. And we'll see what the future holds.
Okay. Anybody else out there?
No,
Alex. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Nina Tucker pointed out that Nina Nardone has another call this morning. She's a busy lady. So I guess we'll wrap this up here. I just want to make a quick few announcements, and then I'll give it back to you, Dan and Nina. So tomorrow, sorry, I have to cheat a little bit. I have to look on another screen so I can get all the information right. Tomorrow we have Tours and Talks. It starts at 9:30. If you haven't signed up yet, this is obviously geared towards the hospitality businesses. And we're talking about moving forward with domestic travel and what that's going to look like. Next week on the 28th, we have how businesses can be proactive with COVID-19 testing. That is presented by Quest Diagnostics. I know a lot of businesses are, as we're discussing, looking to get employees back in the building. So how do we move forward with that? And they'll be talking about that. And finally, on the 30th at 4 p.m., it'll be our virtual happy hour. And we will be having a comedian that day. So I'm really excited about that because that'll be fun. I know we could all use a laugh. So thank you all. Thank you so much for coming. Dan and Nina.
Nina?
Well, I just want to thank everybody for coming. I thought this was a great discussion and something that we can also share with other people we know that are trying to hire and manage their folks. So thank you, Nina. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, David.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Have a great day,
Bye, everyone.
everyone.
Stay safe.